I see some people in the back. Let's give you a chance to grab your seat. So welcome to the Barcelona Trading Conference, brought to you by Finance Magnates and Ultimate FinTech. We're extremely happy to have you here. We have a very busy 2 days in front of us, with industry leaders waiting to share their wisdom and know-how with you. And of course, don't forget the party that we have tonight. For those of you who don't know, you can go to the Finance Magnates booth and you can have a business card with all the directions how to get to the party, the time and everything. So without a further ado, let's move to the opening panel, and we have an interesting one. So the extreme volatility that characterized crypto markets has attracted a bevy of traders, but caused the institutional investors to become reluctant to jump on the bandwagon. Stablecoins aim to tackle this problem with a pegged cryptocurrency. It is also a gateway from fiat to crypto and vice versa. The next panel will examine this booming phenomenon of stablecoins, and will try to predict what the future holds for it. So I'd like to present Rachel McIntosh, cryptocurrency editor at Finance Magnates, and the host of our podcast. Rachel, good luck.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As you know, stablecoins have often been sort of argued that they're going to be the bridge between the crypto world and the traditional financial world. And we've seen that increasingly stablecoins are being used in banks and financial institutions and all over the place. So I'd like to invite my fabulous panelists up onto the stage. We're very pleased to be joined by some superstars from across the industry. And once we get settled in, I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone.
Oui.
Hi. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Nimrod Lehavi from Simplex. We're providing fraudless payment processing for the crypto world. We're enabling exchanges, brokers, wallets to accept credit cards with zero chargeback guarantee. We're also starting to provide off-ramp through regular credit and debit cards, so you're able to sell your crypto and take the fiat into your credit card, and there are some more interesting features coming soon.
Hello. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Lili Zhao. I'm the Director of Ecosystem Growth at Neo Global Development, which is the operation arm for the open source Neo blockchain. Recently, we launched a new initiative called Eco Boost to support DApps and developers. So if anyone thinking of building a stablecoin or any DApps, then happy to chat later. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Sadeh. I'm the founder of Saga. Saga is designing a global currency with stabilization mechanisms, but not a stable coin. We'll get to that, I guess. One that has a KYC and AML process so that it can be accepted and acceptable by mainstream markets. And one with a governance structure that allows the holders of Saga to be the true sovereigns of the currencies. To sum it up, we're basically trying to develop a sort of decentralized central bank for a global currency.
Great. Hi, my name is Miko, and I'm a co-founder with Evercoin. Evercoin is a wallet-based non-custodial exchange, and we currently support USDC, and we are working on Libra support. So we do have stable coins on exchange, and they're quite useful.
Yes, they are quite useful. And as we know, there's been I think 2 years ago there was maybe 6 stable coins. Now there's hundreds of different stable coins. So I'm curious, I'm going to direct this question to all of you. From your standpoint in the industry, where have you seen the most use of stablecoins? Where are they being adopted the most within and without of the cryptocurrency industry? And I'll shoot the question back this way, starting with
So
Miko.
I'll jump in. So to me, I think probably the biggest utilization has actually been Tether, right? And depending on who you talk to, the utility of Tether has really been to kind of like, basically move between something that's USD-like and, moving out of Bitcoin without moving out of crypto, right? So, the other way of looking at it is that it's actually, something that's shady. So that's the jury's out
Yes,
on Tether.
I think that the problem starts with the definition. I don't understand the definition of a stable coin. I understand the definition of a tokenized X. If you want to use US dollars in an ecosystem that uses blockchain, then you need to have a tokenized dollar. But that's what it is at best. I mean, if the reserve is maintained, etc., if it's done properly, at best, it's a tokenized dollar. And there is definitely use for tokenized dollars in a reality where the dollar is the unit of account of the world. But to call it a currency or a coin, I think is an exaggeration. I think it's a good technical means to bridge between the two paradigms. It's a means to have old currencies, fiat currencies over the blockchain, represented over the blockchain, but it doesn't have any essence, any monetary essence, right, by design. Because I think that the problem is that stability is just one of the functions. A currency needs a balance between stability and volatility. And stablecoins by design are renouncing all the other functions in favor of stability, as their name would imply. And so I think there are a technical solution that could be helpful as a tokenized dollar, tokenized euro, renminbi, or whatever. And I think that we'll see more of them that are tokenizing different kinds of assets, but they're not currencies, and I don't think that they're cryptocurrencies by design.
Okay, Lili, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, and to me, stable coins basically just I see something can be traded freely as crypto, but kept as fiat in the sense that it doesn't lose values. So therefore, it's very popular. So far, use case has been mainly by traders to use the freely converts between different cryptocurrencies, and then they can lock in profit, be kept as almost like fiat reserve. Yeah.
Okay, great. And Nimrod?
I think that the type of the stable coins which are pegged to a fiat currency are a very temporary solution. They're going to be gone either by a better technical solution or by digital currencies, which are again, not really digital currencies, but a digital form of the state currency, which will be issued by the state. And as you know, China yesterday, I think the Central Bank of China announced that they're going to start this action in China. I know that users, again, we serve mostly mainstream users at the end. I think that they are looking at, again, I'm talking about the stable coins which are pegged to the currency. They're looking at it as if it's an actual dollar, if they're buying a USDT or USDC or whatever other solution. And there are tens of them, and there's no use for it. It's a very temporary thing, and I'm not sure it's even worth discussing. So I think it's much more interesting to discuss the more interesting ones like Saga, Libra.
I want to, so Nimrod said a very important word, which is, he said the word pegged. So I actually think that we should be talking about pegged coins rather than stable. And I think that the thing that's an issue here is that, first of all, like, there's several issues. One issue is that if you're asset backing against a peg, then the stability of the token is always going to be less than the stability of the underlying asset, right? By necessity, right? So that's a problem, right? Another problem is that a stable coin is always stable until it's not stable, right? And so essentially, you know, these are kind of inherent properties. The thing that I think is important to sort of try to reason is it may be better for us to talk about things that are pegged, because if you actually take the buying power of the US dollar since 1913, it's actually down 95%. So So the US dollar has dropped by 95% in buying power since 1913. So that's hardly stable, right? So to me, like, we know that inflationary currencies are not stable in terms of their buying power. Therefore, the idea of a stable coin is not interesting or even correct, really. The point being that a pegged coin may be the better way of looking at it. So you can say that it's an asset-backed pegged coin with either 100% reserve ratio or a fractional reserve ratio. And I think that's probably the mindset.
And basically nothing is stable.
Nothing is stable. Yes, Ido.
I think if we look at it from a psychology of the market's perspective, then stablecoins are to some degree the intranet, right? There was this big promise of cryptocurrencies, but it's a dangerous and very volatile promise, and it has been abused by many actors in the market, and people lost a lot of money. Just like the internet bubble, right?
Yeah.
And then the second wave was to say, well, the internet is not worth anything, but the intranet. We can take the technology and build internal networks. And this was obviously relinquishing all the promise of this new technology, but in favor of low risk taking, of stability. Stability was all that matters. And as we know now, 30 and some years afterwards, the intranet was not the next big thing. It was a short step back for the balance and the stability. So you don't have, pets.com valued $10 billion anymore, but you're not renouncing the true potential of disrupting monetary theory and disrupting monetary solutions by simply pegging new solutions to the old ones.
Right, Lili.
Yeah, I just want to touch upon Nimrod's comment on the central bank digital currency. I think that's very different from cryptocurrency or digital currency. CDBC, I see it more as digitalization of fiat currency, which is very different from digital currencies. It's different design philosophy, and it's different use case, it's different stakeholders, different mechanism. So it's not replacement to the other one.
What would be the difference between the one issued by the Chinese government and by Bitfinex?
Well,
we
so
don't
the difference,
trust both of them 100%.
So the difference, one is digitalization of a fiat currency, and the other one is digital currencies.
Fractional reserve issued by someone which is completely non-transparent.
No, in any case, in China, the digitalization of fiat currency is already taking place, and people here talk about cashless society in China is already happening. The WeChat Pay, you can use that to pay for everything. Yeah.
I actually agree with Lili that there is sense for different issuance, because if we take Miko's definition of defining it as a peg, then there are really two questions that are of interest. One is to know, how can I know how much money is in the reserve of the peg? The second one, how do I know how much this reserve is committed to actually redeem the coin? That's all that matters. And different solutions can bring different answers to that in terms of transparency of the reserve, where it is held, knowing on a daily basis that the issuer of the currency is not really the ones that we are supposed to trust that he holds the reserve, and what is the structure that makes sure that the reserve is actually committed to redeem the peg. And this is where it gets important. If we stop calling it stablecoins and start calling them pegs, then we can ask the important questions. Who holds the reserve? How committed is it to maintain the peg? And here, different issuers can provide different answers and mitigate some of the risk.
I think that there are other issues when it comes to pegged coin. I stopped calling them stablecoin right now.
Yeah, thank you. Pegged is great.
Pegged coin. So I think there's don't you think there will be some governance issues by the US government that all of a sudden another 20, 30 companies are issuing basically digital dollars?
Yeah.
That's a huge issue, I think.
Right, exactly. So if we have, these digital dollars, and also, obviously Facebook's Libra coming in, and, some people have even sort of pointed out that something like Libra could become the default currency in a nation that's economy is primarily based on cash and doesn't, necessarily have, a well-established digital payment system of any kind. So So what do you make of that? How, if, regardless of whether these are, quote unquote stable coins or pegged coins, let's talk a little bit more about the application of how these things are being used and also what kind of regulations they need.
So,
Yep.
first of all, I don't think that Libra is a stablecoin.
Yeah.
I think that Facebook would benefit quite a lot from us thinking that Libra is a stablecoin, because it would make Libra a payment network very much akin to PayPal with access to 2 billion wallets. But I don't think that Libra is a stablecoin, and it's enough to read the Libra white paper and to understand that it is starting as a peg to a basket of currency, but then Facebook or the consortium can change the peg. And that's enough to say that it is not a stablecoin. And I think that it is a very sensible approach. The approach of saying stabilization is just a function. We are starting by stabilizing, but then we have a huge asset of 2 billion users, and they will end up stabilizing the currency themselves because they will be using it, and so we can change the pegging level. And so from a monetary perspective, Libra makes a lot of sense. What I think doesn't make sense is that the entire movement and the entire added value of cryptocurrencies is about disrupting this monopoly and fragmenting the financial infrastructure. And I'm afraid that what we might see with the current governance mechanism of Libra is a unification instead of fragmentation. And we might find ourselves in a position where we, instead of gaining more power to the holders of the currencies, because that was what it was all about, right? Surrendering power, instead of having our central banks, which are eventually a construct that is elected by governments that are elected by citizens, to find ourselves in a sort of plutocracy where the determination of the value is done by corporations who, by design and very legitimately so, do not have any aim of representing citizens or holders of currencies. So from a monetary perspective, I think that Libra makes a lot of sense. Yeah. From a governance perspective, I fear that it is posing quite a lot of risk from a citizenship perspective. And it turns out that many regulators are seeing the same thing, and next week there is a hearing at the Senate, there is a new G7 committee, etc. In terms of the crypto market, I think it does a tremendous well to the crypto market to have Facebook step in. It validates a lot of our positions. It is bringing it closer to the mainstream, and so remains to see how it will evolve. But it is definitely a good development.
Yeah, Lili.
I want to comment on, from the commercial perspective, I think Libra makes lots of sense. We just need to look at the WeChat, which is a hugely successful example for messaging app to also provide the functions of payment, and later on becomes basically one-stop shop for everything. And I think to some extent, Libra or Facebook is emulating the success of WeChat. But of course, in terms of regulations, compliance, and it's much more complicated because here we're talking about cross-judiciary regulations rather than in the case of China, which is a heterogeneous regulatory environment. With regard to its impacts in crypto, I think in the crypto space, what I see is quite mixed reactions. I think from an ideological point of view, crypto community doesn't quite like the idea that the very tech giants we are trying to disrupt is using the same technology to strengthen their grip on power. And so that's something very hard to swallow. But from a practical point of view, any crypto initiative, someone can question whether it's really cryptocurrency or not, but still it's using blockchain technology, cryptocurrency. So any crypto initiative brings exposure, education, usage to billions of people, users worldwide. Is a great thing to advance the mass adoption of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, which is something we have tried to do and at quite a slow pace. So it's great to have such initiative to advance this adoption.
Absolutely. Miko, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think that Ito's point is probably the main one, right? Which is, it's very interesting to understand that the governance structure of the 28 initial members, soon to be increased actually, will be able to decide what the future is, whether it's pegged, unpegged, or growthful. And this is a very interesting thing, right? Which is initial pegged. If it's initially pegged, it becomes a really interesting regulatory play, because then it can escape the classification of being a security, but then it may actually migrate into being one at some future date. So it's a very interesting path that they're taking. Yeah. So but overall, I'm very excited about it.
Okay. Yeah, Nimrod.
I absolutely agree with Lili. I think it was it's a very good point that in the very short term, it's great for the crypto community in general. Just seeing in the news Facebook and cryptocurrency, it brings a lot of interest, a lot of new people, a lot of people checking the technology, buying more cryptocurrencies. So it's very exciting. And since in the long term, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think I don't think it's going. I don't think that the state model and Libra as a financial network are going to coexist. I think it's this is the point in time where the state model will work, or the model where you become a citizen of Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Because that will completely demolish if Facebook actually pulls through issuing a token, a currency that is being used by all of their users, you become a citizen of Facebook, and it's the largest sovereign nation. They can move mountains, and if they decide to stop being pegged to euros, just the amount of euros they will drop on daily basis will kill the euro. So I don't think the states will let it happen.
Right.
I think I second that. I really hope it happens, because I think it would really, really have a tremendous impact on not just in the crypto space, but in general, how the financial infrastructure is structured and how things are governed. So if it doesn't happen, we all know the consequence of it happening is too great for it to be happening.
But I think Balaji Srinivasan, the former CTO of Coinbase, actually said that Bitcoin is essentially a Thomas Schelling game for a Schelling point for financially disenfranchised people. And essentially what that means is, it means that Facebook, Libra may do better in countries that actually have weaker essentially unpegged currencies with hyperinflation. So it may actually perform a function in non kind of first world type of countries.
It definitely may. I do want to join Nimrod in hoping, not that it doesn't happen, but that if it happens not under the form of a corporate. I think that Libra is much more than a financial solution. It is about a change in the sovereignty in the world as we know it. And in this regards, I'm in the camp of the ones that are hopeful that such sovereignty remains democratic, whether it's within the nation state or not within the nation state. And I don't think that the governance structure now suggests that will be the case. And we already have good points for comparison, because the same Facebook is already handling our data, and not very democratically so. So I think that we have reasons to hope that if it happens in a way where governance takes the lead even over finance, because I agree with Nimrod, it will not coexist with the nation state as we know it. As much as France today is not in the position of telling Facebook, if you do not comply with our regulation, we're shutting you down in France, it will be even less so able to shut down Libra, because Facebook is taking a dump of the euro.
But I think it's overstating to say that Facebook becomes a national entity at the point of minting, because the point that I would make is that the two inevitables have always been death and taxes. Those are the two inevitables, right? And those are essentially the backers of every major government currency, which is that it is a demand currency for taxation, and it's backed by a military. So until Facebook acquires a substantial military, I think that's, and they're really not able to actually, authorize taxation, so I think that they're falling short of being a sovereign by classical nation-state definition.
I think most conflicts in modern nations are settled less by an army and more by financial implications. So I think, you can unify death and taxes into just like financial power. I do agree about the taxation, but the point is that if I'm a Facebook citizen, I can convert all my Israeli shekels, all of them, to Libra tokens, and I can tell the Israeli government I don't have any Israeli shekels to pay my taxes.
Okay.
But to put a fine point on it, like the United States can actually point guns at Facebook people and put them into prisons, and Facebook cannot return the favor.
And they can do that on Satoshi. That's why Bitcoin is the answer.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. The final words, Satoshi Nakamoto. Thank you all, my panelists, so much. Let's give them a round of applause, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So we're done for now. There's another panel starting in a few minutes. I hope to see you there. Thank you very much.